बगल में
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to all the participants. Hello, good afternoon and welcome to all the participants. Now we are here over to our next session on curriculum development. For this, I welcome Dr. T.G. Sambandhan sir. He was Professor and Head, Department of CSE, NITTTR Chennai from 1995 to 2018, which is a centrally funded institution of the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, Chennai. He has done his BE, ME and PhD in civil engineering in full time at a stretch without a gap. He holds an ME with the distinction from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and a PhD from IIT Madras as a CSIR Senior Research Fellow. He has obtained a blend of industrial research and training experiences of several years from India and abroad, mostly in software developments and CSE. He also had a 2-year stint with the State Council for Science and Technology, coordinating Industry Institute Interaction Cell. As an in-house software professional, he had developed over 150,000 lines of coding on Unix platform in India and abroad. In 1998, he was sponsored under World Bank to the Huddersfield University, UK on curriculum development in computer science discipline. I welcome Dr. Sambandhan sir in this teachers training program. Sambandhan sir.
Good afternoon to all the viewers. I will just show my slides and please tell me whether it is you are able to see. My screen sharing is not allowed. Can you allow my screen sharing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 1 minute. No, yes, sir. Now you are able to share.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Is it moving?
Yes, sir. It is moving.
Okay. Good afternoon to all the viewers. At the outset, I would like to acknowledge my thanks to the organizers of this program, the Oriental College of Technology, particularly Dr. Amita Mahor, Dr. Sandeep Garg, and others who has taken personal strain in arranging this program. I am very grateful to them for giving me an opportunity to share my experience with you. As you know, this program is an instructional system designed for OBE through CDIO framework. It is a huge program with around 1,000 slides, with around 1,000 pages of information, with around 13 PhDs output, and so on. So it may not be possible. It is in a separate course with a workshop practice and all, through which you can design. A teacher can design knowledge structures and practice the cognitive structures in the teaching learning process, assessment process, etc., through various characteristics according to CDIO. Many of you may be knowing that the CDIO means conceive, design, implement, and operate model, which is normally practiced in industry. With around 15 years of industrial experience, I can tell you what the industries expect from a student is the CDIO approach. We will just look into it through just a background of what is this. Before that, there are three aspects which a teacher should know, which is related to the outcome-based education and the CDIO framework. The first one is the salient features of the national education policy, the new NEP 2020. Only the salient features I will be sharing with you. This is number one. Number two, the CDIO framework, how it is, the aspects of CDIO framework relates to the OBE. And more than that, an important fact you should understand, the generation gaps between the present day students, the current students who are Gen Zs, and the previous generations, millennials, who are mostly the young teachers today who are teaching engineering technology, belong to that category. So we will see these three aspects, and I will just give you an introduction about what is that CDIO framework and outcome-based education. That's what we can do in a 1.5 hours time. The first one is I'm going to talk about only the salient aspects of the points with which the NEP 2020, which is catering to the engineering technology higher education, particular reference to outcome-based education. As you know, in the teaching learning process, the learning outcome, or in the form of competencies, is again and again and again, it is being spelled out. I've given one of the sample classes, the 9.2b, etc., in the NEP 2020. Holism, in the holistic view of engineering technology, and it is going from interdisciplinary to multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and finally transdisciplinary, including the humanities and science and economics and so on, which is also put it in various classes. And another thing which it insists upon is the heuristic thinking, which is out-of-the-box thinking by the students, which involves creativity, innovation, and so on. And another very important thing which the teachers must know is the best practices, about which I'm going to talk about in this 1.5 hours time. This is also mentioned explicitly by the NEP 2020. Autonomous learning, which is very new in our Indian system right now, around 200 years back, it was there. In our ancient system, it was very much there. But now after the British Raj, this has gone to teacher-led approach. And the present day students, particularly in the higher education, they do not know what is self-regulated learning and so on. And this is very much there in the outcome-based education, and particularly in the CDIO framework, which insists upon the learner characteristics for learning by themselves through self-regulated learning. And this is also explicitly mentioned as a clause in the NEP 2020. In the institutional characteristics, every institution will be given autonomous status. There is nothing like affiliated colleges or affiliating universities, deemed universities, etc. will go. But after the implementation of the NEP 2020, already we are a bit late, with around 2021, only it is going to be implemented, and it is anticipated that India will be pushed to the top 5 in the international scenario by the year 2035. We are a bit late than China. China has gone to Qingdao Declaration in 2016. In Vision China 2030, we are just lacking 5 years, doesn't matter. And this has been explicitly mentioned there, and every university, everything will be called university, and every district, there will be a multidisciplinary university or an institution throughout India, for which from the financial side, they have mentioned that from around 3% of GDP, it will go to 6.6% of GDP, which is a very huge amount. And our Indian culture and civilization, if you know, one of the framework, one of the models of the CDIO, which mentions is the exploratory learning principle. It is not new to India. It was there in ancient times. It was mentioned even in our Upanishads and so on. I will also give a quote for this introductory courses. I may not give the references for our ancient system. It was very much there. And our Indian value systems and so on, including the environmental science. That also has been specified explicitly in the NEP 2020. And again and again, they have mentioned about competency-based credit system. There will be a credit bank the government will form. And every student who is earning, whether it is a graded credit or non-graded credit, this will be kept in an individual names of a student in a national body, so that the horizontal movement of students could take place, and not only within India, internationally, they could do so. And this also has been explicitly mentioned. You know, in the CDIO or outcome-based education, instructions cannot be separated from assessment. Instructions and assessments are two sides of the same coin. So that means it will be a continuous formative assessment, that examination-driven system will go. And that is what has been specified explicitly. We will know about all these things in the just a background, which I'm going to give about the CDIO. With this thing, we will go and see the generation gap between the current day teachers of engineering technology and the current day students who belong to the Gen Zs. And what is the difference between millennials and all? Just a short while, we will do so. The generation gap is very important that a teacher must understand with their students. Number one, I'm not going to go through every terminology used here. I'll just give you the salient points. You know, the Gen Zs are born between 1970 to 2015. They are, most of your students belong to that generation. And most of the teachers, let it leave alone older generation people like me, and I'll leave those things. Most of the teachers belong to 81 to 97, born between these things, and they are millennials or Gen Ys. And the previous to that is Gen X and all. This matters very much because the students are totally independent, whereas the teachers now, the young teachers, even though they are idealistic, they are more to brands and all. But these people, they are concerned very high about Indian culture and civilization. This is a research finding. So you must understand, the present day teacher must understand their philosophy, their psychology and so on. In fact, outcome-based education, some of them put it in other terms, it is outcome-based psychology. Another one is ethical way of life, and most of the young teachers do so. An important point which you should understand, that the present day students, they are for competencies, and that is what NEP 2020 also has mentioned. And they are also concerned about economic concerns, about other things like, apart from the other points like ethical way of life and things. And when we go with the other points, these teachers, young teachers, are struggling with multitasking. And we need not talk about the oldies, but the present day students are natively multitaskers. They are self-expressing using the modern tools, using the internet and so on. And now other points are not much concerned with the outcome-based education, doesn't matter. But they are very much towards the entrepreneurial approach, because they are digitally native task force. And that means the entrepreneurship is treated in two parts by the CDIO approach. One is the entrepreneurship by spirit, another one is by practice. The present day teachers are mostly towards the entrepreneurship by spirit. That means they'll be working somewhere else, and OBE gives a facility to go and do some practice elsewhere, because OBE is leading, taking the teachers towards a business sector from the service sector, whether you like it or not. That is going to be the future. With these two important points, let us move on to the outcome-based education and the CDIO framework. Now, I will also point out some of the accords mentioned here. Anyway, many other teachers also will be talking about the accords. I will not go deeper into the accords, you may be knowing, but some of the essential points why a CDIO is required, because the existing standards like the Washington Accord or Dublin Accord or Seoul Accord, whatever accords and all, they don't talk about the route through in which the teachers will be taking the students in the teaching learning process. And any questions, please? If you want to ask any questions, you can stop me at any time and then ask it now. I will also touch upon the 4 pillars of education mentioned by the UNESCO. And that is what CDIO is based upon, the 4 pillars of education. I will be touching upon that. And as you know, this is not a full course. My full course involves around 2 weeks' time to 1 month, it might take. Okay, let us talk about it. I will also give some references. I have over 280 references in outcome-based education and CDIO. And one of the references, one of the pioneers of OBE, Killam, he says that I've given in italics, just copy-pasted that. And whatever my view, I have given in brackets in non-italic. Many education systems across the world have adapted. Okay, adapted only the superficial aspects of OBE. What does it mean? Throughout the world, not only in India. It says they have completely ignored the basic principles of outcome-based education. That means they have just only for accreditation purposes. That is what I have put it in. Make it easy. It is many of the institutions, maybe around 1,000 institutions in India. I don't think anyone has mentioned taken the OBE into the real spirit. So only for accreditation purposes, they're gonna completely go out. That means what? You write your mission, your vision, mission, and PEO, 3-4 PEOs. And then you take the standards like a Washington Accord or a BET or whatever, and write the standards like PEO. And in many institutions, they simply write the PEOs and forget about everything. Actually, the PEOs are predefined standards. To be very frank with you, POs and COs are not outcome at all. They are outcome statements describing the learning outcome already attained by the students in the form of learning outcome. So the learning outcome is the measurable outcome that you can do so with from your students. And this is not understood by many teachers and many institutions. What they write is they take in a half a day time, you can write the vision, mission, PEOs and all. I don't mean that your university has done that. Many institutions I have seen that they have not understood the basic philosophy and practices of outcome-based education. And outcome-based education doesn't specify any specific model to take in the teaching learning process. And that is why I'm going to insist upon the CDIO model, which is being practiced in industry. Like my own experience from around 15 years in industry and software side. I could bring out around 200 and odd examples in the concepts of the fundamental core logics in every discipline, like mechanical, civil, computer science, IT, and so on. So this is what they have mentioned there. And they have forget about the entire thing. They simply put the tick mark with the CO, with CO. For example, in a CO, the course outcome, you mentioned from a unit, you mentioned about a topic of interest in the CO. And then put a tick mark in not only the core, but also in ethics, for example, in attitude. And then put an tick mark from the PO. How are you sure that ethics has been attained by the student? Unless and otherwise you prove that they have attained, not only through assessment. You can assess anyone, somebody walking in the street, and call him and then put a higher order competency. And then you can put a tick mark in ethics he has attained. That is not outcome-based education. How you have instructed the students and what model you have taken. Scientifically, you have to prove that ethics has gone along with the core content, and then only you can put that, you can verify that the ethic has been imbibed in a particular CO. And let us go, and that is why the requirement of CDIO comes there. Let us just look at it, the historical development of the accords, various accords. And I will also give my own opinion about it. It is my own personal opinion. It is up to you how you are going to take it. For example, if you look at how the Accords came, it was not brought by educational institutions at all. In the very first place, you must understand that these bodies have used educational institutions for accrediting their own professional engineers. PE means professional engineers. If you look at the institution of engineers in India, they have FIA, MIA, chartered engineer, and now they have a professional engineer. Now, with this certificate of professional engineering and computer science, for example, one could go abroad and practice by writing programs, etc., in a real world scenario, provided your PE certificate, professional engineering certificate, is recognized by that country. And that is why when from 89 to 1994, when these advanced countries like the English speaking, well-developed nations like the United States, UK, etc., they wanted to have common platform for migrating the professional engineers in various disciplines. And until then, they were having individual accords between certain countries like UK and Canada could have something like that. But they wanted to have a common platform. So definitely they will have their own vested interest, in my opinion. In my own personal opinion, India shouldn't have gone for the signatory as that part, in my opinion. But they wanted to, these institutions also wanted to use horizontal migration of students from country to country, from institutions to institutions within the same country or from different country to different country, because they wanted to use the same philosophy of the professional engineers movement horizontally. They wanted to do with students also. Now, if you look at that, somebody in the third year engineering course, mechanical engineering from Australia, could go and continue fourth year engineering in Canada. It is possible, provided that institute, both the institute should have same or similar POs. That POs is a standard accepted by the students. When PO is a standard mentioned by the Washington Accord, then every institute should have PO statements which is matching with the standards. And if that has been done, then it is possible for horizontal movement of students from in mechanical engineering from one country to another country. It has come to such a stage that even a one credit student in the vertically moving partial credit system, after attending in a 3-credit course, 1 credit he can leave and another one can come. This is what exactly our NEP 2020 also is recommending. And when they come, a student can go and migrate to another institution, provided they have similar POs. That means it is not the standards, it is a standard statement in which both the institutions agree. And that is an idea. And if you look at the standards, definitely they will have their own vested interest. And that is why even China became only an observable member in 2014, and China has gone to CDIO. CDIO is in fact, it is a standard similar to Washington Accord or Dublin Accord or Seoul Accord or whatever accords and all. And if that CDIO has been originated not by the Western nations like this, it was originated by United Nations, so 4 pillars of education. This was declared from around 2008 onwards to around 2015. They have kept on modifying, and now they have established what present day students actually require. That is the present day Gen Zs. And that is what most of the teachers belong to the previous generation gap. So you must understand thoroughly well what is that present day students want. And that is what scientifically research they have done. And they have found that present day students want happiness. And that's what United Nations also has mentioned in the 4 pillars of education. And based upon that, the CDIO, not only as a as standards, but also as a framework it has come. You will understand how it is going to take place. Now, when CO has been mentioned as a program outcome, or CO is also outcome, why such a name has been adapted? Everything is outcome. In fact, the best word for outcome is outcome. For example, even vision could be an outcome, mission could be an outcome, anything could be outcome. Outcome is outcome. That is why, but they are not really measurable outcome. The only measurable outcome is the learning outcome, in which CDI was very clear about it, from rationale to evidence. Rationale to evidence, it is pointing out, and that is what NEP 2020 has beautifully done, that the learning outcome is the most important thing, and which is invariably holistic in its approach. And they are going to attain competencies, not only in the core areas, but also in skill and attitude. And skill and attitude cannot be treated in isolation. They should be imbibed. That is the philosophy of OBE, and how it is done through CDIO, we will just look at it. Okay. When we look at CDIO, how it originated from that thing, the Washington Accord or any other accord, they don't specify how you are going to attain that. They said this is the destination. We want certain standards. And when the professional engineers, when they come out of your institution, should be ready for industry, ready for practice. Therefore, they can horizontally move out. This is what they have insisted. When up to the 20th century last, because they wanted to come to the 21st century, until the end, engineering science was not treated as engineering practice. Now, I don't mean a long time back, around 100, 150 years back, when survey schools were started in India, even in this Chennai, when they started around 150 years back, it was meant for producing surveyors, which is engineering practice, because they wanted some engineers who can serve the British Raj, and that was the idea behind it. Then after several decades of time, this engineering practice turned into engineering science. And they felt that when engineering science, when they go as an engineer to industries, or when they are going to practice in the real world scenario, using their certificate as professional engineers, they were attacked as engineering graduates, but they were not really prepared for industries. Those who have worked in industries, in my opinion, a best teacher could be, I think, in my opinion, a best teacher who has come from industries, who has worked for around 10 years or so in major industries, will suit better. If it is not possible, if it is not practically possible, you should have a strategically aligned partnership with certain industries, and the teacher should go and come, and the students go and come, and so on. Now, this is what they had realized at the end of the last century. And then the formation of accords came in the 20th century. Some of the accords were very old, like around 56 years back, when ABET was started in 1930s and all. That is why you can find the name objectives in learning objectives and not outcome in ABET. There are some differences between Washington Accord and ABET. And so. But if you look at CDIO as a standards, it gives root through, because the graduate must be immediately productive in their first job. This is what ABET said. This is what Washington Accord said in the very beginning, before they signed the 1989 Washington Accord. And this was questioned by the teachers in engineering colleges. They mentioned, you want our students to be industry ready as the best industry ready for the first day. Is it enough? Or you want us to grow them for lifelong earning through lifelong learning? This is what they asked the question. Then immediately they realized it is not only for industry required, but an engineering education must be taken care of. And that is why when they rethought and they brought out the exit outcomes, so the exit outcomes, they formed an international engineering alliances. And by that time, CDIO also came, and the 4 pillars of education introduced by UNESCO also came, and based upon that, a standard and the route through came. When these people, there was no route through, it was only the destination was specified by these bodies, these engineering colleges or universities they thought of into education term. And that is why now the industries and above have identified the destination. Not only that, and engineering education also must be taken care of through from a route. That is how this one came. And at this juncture, I want to point out a government decision on that. Up to 2014 or so, when this was signed by our India, this Washington Accord, as I was mentioning to you, in my personal opinion, you should have a Bhopal Accord or some Jaipur or Delhi Accord, because for our own nations, we can have our own accords. Why should we bother about those standards? For example, reuse and reuse of spare parts, for example, in mechanical engineering or electrical, electronics engineering. India is standing #1 in the world, because mostly 90% of our trade in engineering is not at all towards engineering and technology. It is in the non-formal sectors. And how to bring those things in the proper engineering technology, it is in the hands of engineering teachers. And I think beautifully this NEP 2020 has made it. This is my opinion. And when 2014 and all, then when it was signed by that, Very recently, this one, the WTO, accordingly, as a teachers of engineering, you should also understand the macroeconomics, political science, and so on and so on. Economics, for example, sociology, psychology, everything will come. Particularly the arts and humanities, etc., will come and imbibe in engineering technology. Now, when this was signed, and in my opinion, again, you need not quote it, India was forced to sign Washington Accord. Could be because they have their own vested interest, and that is why we have gone through and signed them. For example, reuse of spare parts in electrical or electronics engineering, which is not explicitly specified as a standard in the Washington Accord, and where to go. And now NBA has stated that why can't you put PSO or program specific outcome? Again, in my opinion, everything is program specific. Why to put program specific separately and EO separately? And why to bother about this kind of accords? Why can't you take your own accord and then bring up your institution through OBE? And CDIO is a United Nations prepared standard. I don't say that you go for CDIO, but CDIO gives a route through which you can design the teaching learning process and the assessment process. It gives a scientific means of doing it. So now, when this is signed, and this is what I said, that India might have been forced to sign that, and that is why whenever there is a trade imbalance between developing countries like India and the developed nations, whatever they think, for example, we are selling our mangoes and tea and all, they fix up the rate, the WTO. And what so when we buy certain things and manufactured items or defense items or whatever, we want to do it, they charge more and they fix up the price. Therefore, there will be an imbalance. Normally, these developing countries and all, they face this problem. And when we face this problem, we wanted they will do the structural adjustment. The structural adjustments is done in social aspects like education or medical field and so on, health. Now, what happened is our honorable finance minister has done beautifully well in around 1.5 years back. Then for the structural adjustment, they removed the education and wanted to bring Swachh Bharat. I read it in newspaper. And naturally, they were interested in what is this Swachh Bharat? They could not understand. They never liked it in the beginning. And we had to explain that Swachh Bharat is also social aspects. And many countries, including China and many nations, also supported us. This is what I read it in newspaper. And when they supported and finally they agreed, and the education has taken out of this bondage. And now we are free. Why to bother about this Washington Accord or Seoul Accord and so on? Why not Bhopal Accord? Why can't you start and bring out our own standards? As I was mentioning to you, around 90% of our trade, which should be brought in the proper engineering technology. You can have your own standards. And this is what birth of CTIO, and which is based upon the 4 pillars of education. The biggest problem is going to be, this has been beautifully mentioned in the NEP 2020, but how to train our people. That is going to be a Himalayan task. And one such thing, which the Oriental College of Technology has arranged, is a wonderful thing. That when we take around 78 participants are there now, and let us say, assume that around 30 people are really interested in taking out this one. And these 30 people will train another 30, and that 30 multiplied by 30 multiplied by 30, I think within 1 to 1.5 years' time, we could be able to do it, and we will have independence in engineering technology. Unfortunately, it is in the rock bottom right now because there's no quality. We don't have any scientific means of taking in the teaching learning process and bring the actual real world examples from industries. It is not so. When I talk about industrial example, you will wonder, many teachers have wondered that this is what they have not done, attempted at all. And when I talk with students, they say, this is what we want, this is what we want. They are all telling about. So take it very seriously and go with outcome-based education with the CDIO framework. Now, let us take how CDIO formed with the 4 pillars of education. The pillars of education, what the United Nations have mentioned, the 4 is the student must know who he is. An engineering college student must know certain aspects. The 2 he is to be. To be is using his intrapersonal abilities. He must come. Now, slowly, apart from the core areas, now the abilities will come, and that is what competency is all about. When we talk about to know, particularly reference to engineering technology, something like problem analysis, complexity, design. Without that, there is no engineering apart from knowledge. If you look at even then, even in CDIO, something like detailing is missing. In India, detailing is very much part and parcel of engineering technology. And please, by heaven's sake, don't remove the detailing. Without detailing, there is no engineering. There is no specific mention about detailing here. And similarly, other aspects like the spare parts, reuse, etc., safety, entrepreneurship, explicit definitions is not mentioned there. Okay. To be is the interpersonal ability of the students, like communication. And CDIO has made two communications here. One is togetherness with the tomorrow students are not going to be only from Bhopal or some other place. They will be from African countries or Far East countries or from Northeast, from South, and so on. If you are not attracting those students, heterogeneous students with different culture and civilization, your institute will perish. I don't wish that happen, but that is what is going to happen when you don't take care of different characteristics of the students. So together, interpersonal capability, another communication comes. One is the ability to speak out, another one is the group to speak. And engineer and the society, ethics, team spirit, etc., etc. To be in the personal, it is project management, finance, is competency in macroeconomics, microeconomics, entrepreneurship, environmental awareness, etc. When you talk about society, you may have to bring in sociology, psychology, economics, commerce, art. Why not? Because aesthetic is going to play a very, very important role in future. So art with fine arts, and our country is very, very rich. The biggest problem in our country is riches. It is the biggest problem. In any area you take in arts, culture, and all, you are the maximum availability. And that is the biggest problem in that. And that should be brought in whatever aspects you want in the engineering and technology. Another important thing is to do. The to do by the student is not to simply know, but to do. Know, of course, he can know about the engineering basic principles like the problem analysis, design, etc. But how he is going to apply, there comes the industry. If you go to industry, when I went to industry for the first time, a project was given to me, and I should be able to immediately take. I should not say, no, this is not my field. Then they will say your account is settled, goodbye. That's what. You should be proactive. And you should take whatever be the reason. And immediately that is going to be transdisciplinary in nature. It is not going to be multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary. It is going to be transdisciplinary, which involves societal needs and things like economy and industrial rigor will come. And that is what CDIO mentions, that when the project or problem is given to an engineer, he is going to conceive that. Conceive is not knowing, it is conceptualizing the problem. And that is invariably, it is holistic in nature. Holistic means it is a bigger picture for our local community, for our country, etc. You must think of that. And then design comes. Without design, there is no engineering, and detailing comes along with that. Implement comes in a different aspects. He is not going to, in engineering education, how to take about in a scientific means, the methodology, the model gives that. And operate, both this implement and operate involves skill, attitude. That means a core here, for example, design cannot be segregated from the finance. A complexity analysis cannot be differentiated from the society, engineering society, or ethics and so on. You cannot treat them in isolation. Communication skill cannot be treated in isolation. It should be an articulating ability by the student, and that is why learning outcomes come. There are around 400, 500 learning outcomes designed in the best practices, like Marzano's learning, Robert Marzano's learning outcomes, Jonathan Telsner, David Merrill, and so many pedagogists have brought in learning outcome. We cannot change the term. For example, articulating socioculture is an outcome. That is the real outcome. CO, PO are not outcome at all. They are statements describing like the articulating socioculture already attained by the student. That is the meaning of it. So the CDIO comes here, and let's see how to do it. What is the relationship between the accords already existing and the outcome-based education? Now only you are going to enter into a philosophy or psychology outcome-based education, which is different in all aspects from the traditional, linear, syllabus-oriented, examination-driven input-output system. It is almost ultra in almost all aspects. When CDIO is a framework. You can call it as a model. It is a practice, the route which has been specified, along with the standards. Now, when Washington Accord or OBE gives about standards, let us say 12 standards, you might have put it as a PO, and many institutions I have seen, they are simply putting that writing in the paint and they forget about it. They don't even write the PO statements by themselves. This is on one hand. This is the standards. Now, where comes this? How to go about, how to implement the teaching learning process with the learning outcome, and what is that students are going to attain, how they are going to attain. Now, here comes the outcome-based education. As I mentioned to you, outcome is outcome. Best word is outcome. It is an engineering psychology. Why the psychology comes here? I suppose there are some psychologists attending this course. I'll be very happy if they are attending. In fact, we are entering into their field. But there are some problems. You know, they don't call it learning. They call it conditioning. Even education, they call it modeling and so on. Forget about all those things. But we have to get their input. Why? Because to determine fundamental theories with the problem, the principles of learning. Now, learning is different from teaching. Now, learning, a learner must learn. If the horse is thirsty, you can take the horse to the pond, and who has to drink water? You cannot drink water for the horse. You cannot learn for others. That is the problem. That is somehow, it is a natural phenomenon. Learning must take from within the person. This was understood by our ancient people like Swami Vivekananda, has beautifully mentioned it is a developmental. And even 100 years back, when Rabindranath Tagore, when he started his in Shantiniketan about the Vishwabharati University, he said, all are genius, all can bloom, but not on the same day, not in the same way. You see, about 100 years later, William Spady, one of the pioneers of outcome-based education, says all can graduate, but not on the same day, not in the same way. What a beautiful coincidence. 100 years back, this was mentioned. Not even 100 years back. 1,000 years back, 2,000 years back, there are recorded in India, even in the ancient Tamil literature, in Tolhapiam, around which I belong to. Around 2,000 years back, this was mentioned that the student can learn only 1/4 from a teacher and only 1/4 to peer-to-peer discussion and debate, and half by exhibiting his rational thinking, in reasonable thinking, reasoning out, and there comes creativity, etc. This was mentioned 2,000 years back. You'll say it is learner-centric. Learner-centric is not that simply learners learn by themselves and teacher-led means teachers teach. It is not that simple. There is a world of a difference between learner-centric and teacher-led. And this is the first one you should understand. It is not, in my opinion, I think that it will take almost like 15 days to undergo a course. You will understand what is learner-centric. It is not a very simple thing. You must facilitate. You must do all sorts of things. A teacher should not come out with an answer. You should ask, put question over question like that. It is a different method, and that is what we are going to see in the CDIO framework and so on. It is broad goals, goals. This is a bigger picture. When you talk about computer science area, when you write thousands of lines of coding, it is not only it's going to be a problem that the program will be used. When I left after writing around 150,000 lines of coding, when I was in Riyadh, when I came out from Saudi Arabia, etc., those people were shivering. They said, what will happen to this program, etc. I wanted to come back to India, and they said the attrition rate is going to be the major problem in software. When nobody can take over and then read this 150,000 lines of single coding and to reproduce, they might say we will develop it once again. And this is the problem in computer science. For example, even in civil engineering, or you must think in the societal form. My one classmate who was a general manager in railways, he used to tell me that, you know, whenever a train accident takes place, it is a big responsibility given to me, and I go and take whatever I want to build take out a crane, derrick a crane, or do this thing, put the welding, and then cut out the train and all. He used to tell a lot of story. And so naturally, it is a bigger picture one has to see. Economics will come, aesthetics will come, and things like that. So it's a bigger goal. And now teach for mastery, not from examination given. It's very important. The examination has gone. There is nothing like that. The examination fever test, whenever the test is coming, the students used to get into some kind of fever, has gone. Now, maybe teachers might get what to do, because assessment is continuous assessment, not only with students, but also with teachers, how they are going to take this process and all. So it is learning. And nobody asked me when I went to industry, what is Ohm's law? What is Hooke's law? What is this law? Nobody asked. He says, if you want, you can refer. You can say, but how are you going to use it? You are going to design using economically, or you're going to design with environmental aspect, or for the society, and things like that, which is holistic. And this is even the process of teaching learning is not towards the examination driven approach. From time bound, it has gone to flexible with respect to competency. That is what again and again and NEP 2020 specifies. It is employability oriented education, and what they require is competency. And thematic design down, when you design the your course, your instructions, your assessment techniques, etc. And when you are delivering to the students, it is a bottom up. So it is delivery from bottom up, design from top to down. So from linear, it is going to non-linear. You must, many teachers don't know what is this non-linear approach. You must understand that the world of difference between linear approach and non-linear approach. Linear approach is not possible in higher education. That is why I used to say that Bloom's model can never be used in higher education. Bloom's model is a very good model for lower education, up to 9th standard or 10th standard, when the students are linearly going up. A beautiful linear system is fantastic. Bloom's model can be used. But in higher education, it's going to be a catastrophe. Never ever use Bloom's model. That is why best practices, which is non-linear approaches, come. For example, somebody wants to understand the working principle of a centrifugal pump. For example, what is centrifugal pump? It is knowledge. When you put, you cannot go to comprehension, you cannot go to application later. Immediately the student applies, where exactly you will apply the centrifugal pump. And what will happen if it is going to create noise? If somebody doesn't want noise, neighboring, how is it, what will you do? Then you come back. So you analyze, you synthesize, again come back application, again go back analyze, and then finally come and understand what is the certificate. In higher education, it has to be non-linear, and that is why I even talked with the former chairman of NBA when he gave a speech at IIT Madras. I said it is not possible. He said we never insisted upon Bloom's model. Bloom's taxonomy also is giving problem when you automate it. Without automated, without virtual learning environment, it is impossible to implement outcome-based education, because you may have to use let us say, Moodle or some other program where you can incorporate the competencies and then automate it for assessment. It is not physically possible. When you do that, instead of data extraction, you may have to do concept extraction. And when you get into concept extraction, you'll get into problem with Bloom's taxonomy, because it is repeating. And that is why we may have to use phrases and all, particular reference to engineering technology. And that is why these points, when we go with a modeled approach in using CDIO, this is what we have to look at. Okay. Now, how you're going to do this, up to what time I must speak? Okay, somebody must cooperate, because I do not know how many of you are listening to my lecture. Are we going in the right direction? Somebody could give.
Yes, sir. Excellent, sir.
Okay, okay.
Excellent.
Okay, okay. So no problem. It is up to you. If it goes to teachers, I'll be very happy. Because in India, we should think about India. That is what all this are. It is possible through outcome-based education. Okay. When your institute is moving towards a particular direction, where exactly it is moving, everybody should know. That is what shared vision mission. Shared vision mission, in two aspects you have to know. One is sharing your vision for a particular program with other institutions, similar institutions in the world. Maybe when you are going back rural uplift, I will show you some example in computer science or mechanical engineering. When you do with this kind of vision, you are taking for rural uplift, for example, another institute may call from Uzbekistan. They will say ours also is rural uplift. And we look at the PO statements of your institutions and their institutions. If they are matching, then your students can go, teachers can go, and then exchange can take place. Now, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, outcome-based education is going towards business sector, particularly for teachers. It is going to bring in money. Because when you put your content, it is not only for your students, you are putting it in flipped classrooms for others also. So naturally, you will start earning money. This is what it is happening. I don't say that you should be money-minded. Even if you want to keep education as a pure service sector, even then you may have to change from the traditional linear approach to outcome-based approach. But outcome-based approach is mentioning about an approach towards a commercial aspect, particularly for teachers. So you may have to define very carefully about the direction in which you are going. For example, if you are taking your institute to product development in a global perspective, and another institute is taking your institutions to rural uplift, both may have same mechanical engineering, but it will have different direction altogether. And that is what it is defined from your core values of your institutes. It cannot deviate much for it. In local serving the local communities, if that is going to be the core values of an institute, it cannot be different from the definition of the vision statement of a particular program or the institute even. So when it is spearheading to a different defined direction, each institute will have a different direction, and you cannot compare between institute to institute. And the same thing, you cannot compare between a student to student. All are brilliant students, all are genius. They can do not on the same day, not in the same way. So one could be having a thorough knowledge in a core area. Another student may have a thorough knowledge in different aspects of the core. For example, he may be good at complex problem solving. And not only that, in skill level and aptitude, each student have different competencies. So you cannot simply compare between this percentage of mark. What happened to you? It is not possible. Similarly, in a shared vision, this is defined by the definition of the vision mission. And another one is constituents play a very important role. Each one has got a definite role to play. And how this is governed by your department, your program, or your institution. And you have another definition called the program educational objective. This is a long-term objective. Yeah. Any questions, please? Any questions? You can stop me. Okay. Any questions you can ask me? I can answer. When the program educational objective is a long-term goal, maybe after graduation, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and so on. So this definition should be aligned with that definition. So the next definition comes here for every program. What we call it as a lead discipline, in which, let us say, computer science or mechanical engineering is a lead discipline in which other disciplinary areas may come. So when you are going to define an outcome for here, for your specific discipline, a lead discipline, it is specified through outside agencies' definitions. For example, this has been brought out by Washington Accord or Dublin Accord and things like that. So this is what it is specified, the first level. Then the objective comes outcome. Outcome is measurable, whereas objective is long-term, maybe 5 years, maybe 3 years, depending upon the lead discipline. Now here comes course. Now the course doesn't belong only to a particular program or a discipline. For example, computer science, not only the disciplines, the courses belong under the computer science could come. There could be some course from sociology could come, some from psychology could come, some from arts could come, and some something else, because computer could be applied in languages. For example, India has got its own problem, so much problem. What we require is a number of engineers who could serve India. This is what we require. And now there are 20, 25 languages are there. So you automate it using Unicode for develop our own Unicode so that it is automatic translation is possible. So that kind of problem should come, and that is why a language department could come. A course could be aligned with your computer science program. Similarly, somebody wants to manufacture musical instruments. For example, India is standing number 1 in the world in musical instruments, and somebody wants to make it to bring it to engineering technology. It is possible. From fine arts could come and join the mechanical engineering. So this is how the idea behind course outcome and program outcome, provided both are aligned together. If it is not so, it is not possible to align. So these things are accomplishment of the outcome really by students, which is measurable. And the last one, what you are going to see is the actual outcome. You should be very careful in understanding this. I again and again tell you, POs and COs and POs are not outcome at all, because they are used like outcome, like mission. What is the outcome of this institute? You can say mission or vision and so on. But the real outcome is yellows. Yellows is defined by pedagogies. So many like articulating socio-culture, semantic mapping, like that 400, 500 outcomes are there, which you cannot change. Each one has to be fit in well with a knowledge structure. And when the knowledge structure instead of topic, it is a concept given by a teacher, and that should be delivered at a particular cognitive structure. Structure means organization. C language is a structured language. That means organization of logics is done in a beautiful way. That is how in a logical way, when it is done, it is structured. You will have to arrange your instructions into knowledge structures. How to do it, I will explain to you a little bit with the CDIO approach. Now, this is learning outcome. This is the most important thing in which you can directly measure the competency attained by your students. Now, the volume and the student activities are proportional to this pyramid. I have arranged in a pyramidal form. The least activity is done in the vision, mission, etc. And the maximum biggest activity and the students' involvement is more in the learning outcome. And the learning outcome could be measured even in an episode in a classroom, even with 15 minutes to 20 minutes when the teacher has adapted through constructivism. I will talk about a little bit. I think if it is possible, I will do it about the constructivism and all, the difference between the TLE or the traditional linear syllabus-oriented education system with outcome-based education system. And now this is every one compartment, because we are talking about the people involved in defining this belongs to one compartment, another compartment, like that. These things are arranged in compartments. Then they are compartmentally arranged. That's what we have seen already also. You can do so using a management technique called TQM. TQM is total quality management, which is gone now. Now, after the introduction of agile technology, management technology, they all claim that Nokia introduced first, and whether IBM introduced or this Corolla car company introduced, we don't know. When originally the TQM was introduced by that, the TQM has gone because that they used compartmentalization, which is not outcome-based one. Because by the by, an external body is required to define this PO, and then using that one, the terms used so that you can verify. That is why an institution you can compare. Horizontal movement is possible for the student. And that is a standard. Let us assume 12 standards given by your Washington Accord or ABET or the 20 standards, 19 standards has come, and which all that of the CDIO. You can use any standard, no problem. But CDIO gives a framework also. Now, these two, once it is designed and compartmentalized, problem comes now. How to manage, how to integrate? When you go to quality education, means that components must be integrated. It cannot be treated in isolation because it must be involved with a theme. So the compartmentalization is opposite to holism. Holism is bigger picture, a holistic approach. And engineering technology, and not only engineering technology, because I belong to engineering technology, I talk about that. And tomorrow it will be, as I told you, it is transdisciplinary. Any field, any problem-oriented field, excepting certain fields about which I do not know, like philosophy or poetry and all. And there also could be, I do not know because I don't belong to that one. Other than that, everything is outcome-based, including economics, sociology, psychology, everything is outcome-based. It's physics, chemistry, mathematics, and all people will join together. Now, there is nothing like I belong to mechanical engineering and I talk about mechanical engineering. No, you have to talk about aesthetics. You may have to bring in arts also. Humanities and science all will come together. Now, when you want to change this compartmentalization to holism, you have to integrate these components. So you require a theme. And the theme, according to outcome-based education, is learner. That is how the learner comes to the center scenario of the OBE. So far, it is whatever a teacher is telling the students, now students will learn by themselves. How to learn by themselves, it is in the hands of teachers. Teachers cannot walk away that I finished first unit, second unit, third unit, blah, 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 I finished everything. Oh, other teachers also congratulating. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, finished all units. We're not going to give me party. It is not so. And how many units does your student has understood? How many students you have learned, for example? And if a teacher says, oh, why should I care whether they learn or not? It is a sin. Particularly in India, we consider this teaching is a noble profession. And it is a job of a teacher to ascertain that learning is taking place. And it is the job of a teacher. He becomes a facilitator. He finds out whether learning is taking place. And this is how let us understand what is the learner-centric approach. The learner is now a part and parcel of the system. One important domain is coming. Apart from, you might have already, some of you might have heard about affective domain. This is the faculty of heart, then cognitive domain in the faculty of head, and psychomotor domain, the faculty of hands, let us say. It is a physical movement and all. But in learning, it involves all. Not that one could be more pronounced than the other. That is different. One more important thing comes the metacognition. The metacognition is thinking about the thinking process. It is the awareness of learning. When you talk about learner-centric approach, you should ascertain whether your learners are learning. That is in the hands of a teacher. And now when the metacognition comes, it is not new to India, ancient India. In Indian education system, on some other occasion, if God willing, I will give our ancient Indian systems in which they have segregated beautifully the lower level education up to the age of 15. And then from 15 above, the Vedantic teaching and all, how they are beautifully teaching using learner-centric approach. They have used the metacognition, which is a domain, which now it is coming. I'm not just telling. If I am telling, you can say that being an Indian, you are biased and all. I have got references. I have got 200 and odd references in outcome-based education. And many references say that it originated in ancient India, in Upanishads, about this metacognition, about the learning process, because we are very good at that. Our ancient universities and all in India used that. And now they are scientifically trying to bring that, our old system, back to the India. And that is what it's all about. And many teachers, particularly engineering technology, it is Greek and Latin. What is metacognition? And you must know. And if you do not know, learner-centric approach is not possible at all. There is some problem if they are not getting a job. For example, placement is not so. It is employability-oriented education. I will also touch upon that. Then student activity, there is some problem. And there is a problem in mapping with all your SLO, with the CO, etc., etc. And the course program, etc., etc. There are some problems. Students are facing problems. Only from that you can achieve. Students are not getting problem. What is the problem? Where exactly? There could be a problem in administration. There could be a problem here or here. Right? You keep on doing so using agile technology. So it is not, TQM is not possible. It is agile, incremental and iterative process of management, which is the latest technique which we are going to talk about. And integration of these components is number one. And when you design your instructions, etc., it's top to bottom. When you deliver to the student, it is ulta. And competency-based credit system. Even the choice-based credit system, now it has gone to vertical movement of the credits. Even in a 3-credit course, you must arrange in such a way that after 1 credit, some students are going. For example, if it's a 45-day 45 week, whatever, 45-week program or whatever you say, 15 weeks, some students might go. So you conduct a partial, it is not test. Test word is not there. It is assessment. Assessing the formation of the students, and also there are third component, etc. I require 2.5 days to talk about assessment alone, and you cannot segregate instructions from assessment. It is two sides of the same coin. So you may have to take care like that. So it is competency-based credit system, and Government of India is going to keep a bank, like a credit bank, in which the credits earned by the students go there. Some of the credits could be earned through outside agency. Also, the students could go to an industry and then get some 1.5 credit and all. Partial credit and all is possible. It is a complex system. It may look complex in the beginning, but the teacher must know. And reclaiming model, it is not a linear model. It is not like unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, etc. It is not covering the topics. It is totally different approach. And that is called a reclaiming model of CDIO, which gives a real world scenario to a student and then allows him to learn by himself. And the teacher gives the facilitation, constructivism. It is a philosophy used. It is a psychology used. As I told you, many terms are psychological terms. In fact, I have defined with a measurable definition, operational definition. So the psychologists also will not feel differently. Otherwise, they will find a problem with our approach. We have to get those theories, etc., from psychologists. Then we have to enter into engineering technology. Then only it is possible to have an engineering education. So this developmental education system, it is the structures of curriculum are regarded a means and not the end. That whole curriculum, according to the outcome-based education, particularly with respect to CDIO, is a living organism. You cannot dissect any part of that curriculum. You can have an entry to the curriculum at any juncture, and it is always having a beginning and there is no end. Therefore, it cannot be kept under a single document. Okay. It is the system which is going to talk about when I'm going to stop. Okay. Can somebody help me? Whenever I must stop, you can tell. Okay, no problem. It is something like our education system is through something like a tree. If you get a time, an opportunity, read a book called A Beautiful Tree by Paul. He has written about our ancient system, how our beautiful education system in India, and it is a beautiful tree. It is something like growing a tree. The very big, the central trunk of the tree is learner characteristics. The learner characteristics is the current learner characteristics of your institution. Let us say Bhopal Oriental College of Technology, the students coming from maybe from rural places and Bhopal, near Bhopal or from Madhya Pradesh or somewhere else, you should find out their learner characteristics called current learner characteristics. Now you are taking them to aspiring learner characteristics. The aspiration should come from yourself, maybe from your institutional aspiring learner characteristics or the learner characteristics of the aspiring students. Now both you are going to take them. How you are going to take through other characteristics like the teacher characteristics, assessment, instructional characteristics, and one important thing I want to differentiate in the concept of any engineering is the contemporary industrial characteristics and the fundamental engineering characteristics. Now, the fundamental engineering characteristics don't vary much according to the time frame, but industrial or contemporary may vary quickly. For example, in engineering technology, 50% of your syllabi could become obsolete in 5 years' time. This is a scientific work has done. In core branches like mechanical, civil, etc., this could happen. In circuit branches like electronics and communication engineering or instrumentation engineering, within 3 years, 50% of the current syllabi will go obsolete. In computer science and IT, within 1 year, 50% of the core will go obsolete. That means in a 4-year degree course, what your students are learning now, they do not going to apply that when they become an engineer. Now, this is because you have bundled your content with fundamental core with contemporary core. And when you segregate them, that is the job of a teacher. When you do so, then that is why as a fundamental core only you have to put, and with respect to contemporary core, you leave the job with your students in a self-regulated means. They are going to do this job. And with social environment, they are growing. And that is using the principles of OBE, you are growing them. And after graduation, they are going to get knowledge not only in the core area, but also say complex problem analysis, design, engineer and society, communications, project management. They are going to yield fruits through a context called the CDIO when you're going to bring in, and in a developmental education process, because it is not going to, they are not going to develop only in the core areas, but also in competencies, which is imbibed along with their core. Now, how it is going to do this is called the graduate attributes when the Washington Accord is calling. OBE and CDIO in the teaching learning process, I will just touch upon, because many of you may not understand that what is this fellow is using a lot of terminologies and all, but it is a new education theory. That is why it is taking time. And I want to give you a overview of my program, which is almost a 2 weeks program, or minimum 2 weeks, in which it involves 250 pages of workbook, in which every teacher must be designing knowledge structure, and they will be delivering it in a particular cognitive structure. They should understand a model using a CDIO approach. That is why it may be confusing some of you. And let us say, I just want to give you an idea. Now, we have seen the pyramid with the CO, PO, PEO, etc. Now, where is the CDIO comes? It looks a bit complex, a bit shocking in the beginning. Don't be afraid. It is a very complex process. Now, when you are taking 1 day to define a PO, CO, etc., it is going to be a hell of a job in the beginning to design your instructions according to outcome-based education. Here comes the CDIO. When the government bodies such as the CTE or NAC or NBA or UGC or NCERT, they have all specified, they are supposed to have specified key learning areas in particular lead discipline. For example, mechanical engineering, strength of materials, or for example, continuity equation for civil, mechanical, etc. And differentiating fibers with multi-threading in operating systems of computer science. Such areas they should have defined. It's called key learning areas. And the key learning areas will be at par with international level. And fortunately, in India, they have mentioned it is only some recommended content. And again, I have found some mistakes in the recommended content of our AICT and all. It is in my opinion, because they have clubbed this contemporary core with fundamental core. The job of an institutionalized education should concentrate on fundamental core. It is the industries which involve skill, procedure-oriented knowledge dimensions they are interested in. And what is enabling technology with skill is the outcome competency. And your job, institutional job, is to concentrate more on the fundamental core logics. And the students will bring contemporary core. And how to bring it? You have to do a first level of anatomy of the existing topics of the key learning area. The key learning area will specify only the definition of the area, not even definition. They might have mentioned about topics, for example, like what your present day syllabi is doing. So the fundamental core logic and the contemporary core and the core basis, which belongs to the mathematics or physics or chemistry or the background scientific principles, that must be segregated to form the knowledge structure. As a knowledge structure is an entity, it is a schemata used for instructions, any particular concept, not covering a topic. Now, when you try to do that, the fundamental core logic should be brought from CO. Now, the first level of your CO, in which you are supposed to have defined the key learning area with what kind of skill and attitude as a competency you are going to imbibe. Now, when you are going to do that, now you must see your current learner characteristics and your aspiring learner characteristics. where you are taking them, and that is how you have to concentrate that, and that is done in the contemporary core. You must bring in. You can tell your students to bring, or in the real world scenario, or with a strategically aligned industry, you can bring the contemporary core. Now, the fundamental core is what mentioned in the key learning area, and the core base is, that is both or selected from the CO, and you have done an anatomy, the first level. Now you organize this into a structured form, an instructional structure using a schemata. And how to do it, there are some scientific means to do that, and that is knowledge structure. And now carefully imbibe the real world problem, which should be not contrary examples. It is a real world examples brought from industry, and that industry may be from India, maybe from abroad, etc. You should carefully imbibe. And then bring and start using cognitive structure. It is an instance of a pedagogical instance using which a teacher is delivering his instructions to the students, maybe through flipped classroom, in which he has done his own video programming, and it is the property of the teacher, so that he earns some money also. So, as I told you, it is going to business, and some will go to institute as a royalty. So it is between teacher and the institute. They can make money. And sometimes when you are programming the flipped classroom in your YouTube, it might go into YouTube, etc. And there are certain companies which will put it in the VLA, virtual learning environment. Not only your students are learning from Africa, from Far East, and all will log in. As and when they log in with millions, you become a millionaire. And that is done even today. It is done by teachers. And that is how carefully a teacher is designing this knowledge structure with a real world problem. And that comes the most important aspects is the authentic task. The authentic task is where you are imbibing the SLO. The SLO is the form of students' learning outcome, must be scientifically designed for a particular style of a real world problem, for a particular learner characteristics, which is the initial level current learner characteristics, and where you are taking them. There comes the CDIO, because the rationale evidence, and how to scientifically do, you must carefully design that authentic task. The authentic task is an industrial problem in which he is able to learn the key learning area. The key learning area is in the form of a concept, an engineering concept which is going to earn. Now, thereby, this is imbibed, and finally, this is reflected in the PO. How to do it? According to whatever you have defined in the PO statement, you bring in. Then only your students will be able to migrate to other institutes in other countries also. After completion of one credit in mechanical or computer science, he can go and continue in another lead discipline also. It's highly flexible, because he is not talking about the core content alone. It is a competency, what he is gaining and what he is going to apply and going to use it. That is the idea behind this CDIO, the CDIO's model, and the outcome-based education's philosophy and so on. Now, this is how it should be done. And again, in my opinion, it might take around, for the present day teachers, in the beginning, it may take around, let us say, 1 to 1.5 years, because there could be some, if you have some, let us say, 10 topics in your current unit 1, how many units you may have in a particular course? Let us say 5 units. Okay, 5 into 10, around 50 topics are there. The topics doesn't say, it may be bundled with your contemporary industry core and fundamental. There's no difference at all. It's all bundled together, and it doesn't talk about depth. It doesn't talk about anything. It is simply a content of the textbook or whatever. Now that must be changed. Now the concept must be imbibed with the learning outcome, and that is why he is interested in competency, and competency he is gaining. He is developing the competency along with the core content. Now the core content is going to play a lower role, and the competency is going to be the top. That is what Killen and all those scientists, this pedagogists, William Spady and all outside telling. The first level, what you are going to instruct your student depends upon the competency and not the core. The core is assisted, it comes later. And most of the assessment will be through open book, open discussion, etc. You're not going to ask, what is that? What is this? What is explain, describe, all those things will come. In what situation you would prefer the centrifugal pump over reciprocating pump in Bhopal for pumping out a slurry in a nearby river. And the student must understand whether he is going to give importance to the local labor and the local environmental law or economy or aesthetic point of view, etc., etc. Whether it's going to give a sound, etc. And then only he is going to understand the working principle of a centrifugal pump. Or he might argue that I am going to use a reciprocating pump instead, even though it is outdated. He could argue. And so it is articulating socio-culture. So he is gaining the competency of communication, etc., imbibed along with the core. And that is the idea behind this authentic task. Normally, it is taken out of these many key learning areas. Threshold concepts are taken. They are key concepts without which a particular disciplinary area the student cannot progress further. A CDIO constant rationale comes here. The CDIO rationale is the authentic task and the evidence is the SAVO. Now, here it comes. Okay, I will finalize it in because I do not know what time I should stop. Okay, in another 5 minutes, then we will have discussions. The knowledge structure along with the authentic task is the rationale and the evidence is the learning outcome. Now, when you design your knowledge structure, you are segregated into fundamental, core logic, core basis, and contemporary, which normally brought by the students themselves. And there are hundreds of knowledge structure could come in this thing. But most of the knowledge structures will go to the VLE, in which the teacher is the owner, and whenever the student log in using flipped classrooms, he is going to learn by himself. And after the design, the teacher is going to get much personal time. He's going to concentrate more on research and industrial activities and so on, because it is automated procedures he will take. Only the very key learning areas, the threshold concepts, he is going to take the classroom teaching, and all students will attend to that using his the principle of constructivism and so on. So each one, the knowledge structure, and then how he is going to do the authentic task with competency has gone, with skill, and along with the knowledge structures, the attitude, etc. So different KS, the different competencies will go to the students, and he's going to develop finally the POs and all. Okay. Now with this example, I will stop and we will have a discussion if you want. Example. There are 3 areas in engineering technology. One attained competency. One is engineering core. Now, the engineering technology, you are taking the core area such as the basic science, mathematics, etc., complex problem solving, design, detailing, etc., from fundamental to the contemporary. Contemporary will be changing, but fundamental will not change. As I told you, within 1 year, 50% of the syllabus is becoming obsolete only in the contemporary, not in fundamental. Same thing with the mechanical, same thing with civil, etc. Now, when it is slowly, when you are taking it one side, you simultaneously you take the abilities of the students from serialistic approach, the holistic. He should have a holism or a bigger picture through his development of intrapersonal abilities, such as lifelong learning habits, communication skill, critical thinking ability, etc., which is skill, which is also used as a hard skill. Similarly, simultaneously, his responsibility as society, one is civic, one is academic, one is society, in which you are taking through the personal, from person to self to society, through such as engineering, society, ethics, etc. And when a core and the skill is imbibed, you can assess through authentic task. You can design through authentic task. Similarly, core with societal responsibility, you can do so with authentic task. And you can do formative assessment, because whenever an instruction is given, assessment is continued simultaneously. You cannot segregate. And the third component is used, in which self-regulated learning, peer-to-peer, self-assessment, and all will come. It is a big one according to CDIO. And there, the attitude and skill without this core, if it is imbibed, you can assess through third component. And when everything is imbibed, transformational learning is taking place, and that is what outcome-based education says. And the methodology framework, or the root group, is the CDIO framework, what we are saying. Okay. Example I've given. Skill and abilities, one of the LOs. The SLO is articulating socio-culture. The another one is articulating content is the core and the skill. The skill and the attitude is articulating socio-culture. The core and the societal responsibility is goal setting. This is an example. There are around 400, 500 learning outcomes, and they are defined by educational psychologists. I have given two programs example. One is Institution A. The Institution A in their vision statement, both are computer science programs, and to be a center of excellence. So they have brought in the academic part here. In effective integration of ICT, effective integration of ICT is the ability given to a student which involves the civic responsibility. Also, product development is also a skill given to as a competency to the student. So they have brought in the academic part and the civic part, and the social part is in a global perspective. So this is what to take down. So it is a valid vision statement by Institution A in the CSE program. Let us take another Institution E in the same program, CSC, but they have defined in a different direction. To be a renowned program. So they have brought in the academic part, satisfying the technology and the needs of the rural and underprivileged, where in pan-Indian environment. So this is social aspect has come, civic responsibility comes, rural and underprivileged, and the academic is there. But both definitions are totally different, even though the program is same. And mission statement, accordingly, it is aligned to develop students focusing on careers in global market. See, the global perspective, global markets, career has been defined in the mission. The mission is to develop. This is to be a long-term goal. The long-term vision they have taken. Institute B, they have taken uplifting rural society in par with this vision and provide comprehensive ICT experience through lifelong learning, etc. for the students, wonderfully defined, but both are going in a different direction. PEO, one example I'm giving. Graduates will be prepared with skills in the ever-changing ICT. Why? Because in the global market and global perspective, ICT ever-changing, they have brought in. Here, they have brought in graduates will be prepared with an ethical work culture for taking ICT to rural India, maybe for agricultural development, maybe for other rural development. So this is in par with that, it is aligned. Now they have taken, I have given in blue color, a particular PO standard. You cannot change anything. It is standard given by Washington Accord or ABET or Seoul Accord or Bhopal Accord, whatever accord you want, you can take it, or CDA Accord also. It is immaterial. Even the NBA says it is not. Yeah, is it time? Should I have to stop?
No, so please go, sir. Please go ahead.
Minutes, 5 minutes.
It's very interesting one.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The PO statement from the PO. PO is a standard given by you have referred. Now, PO statement that these people giving ability to use techniques. This is PO. Skills with modern software tools in analyzing a software product in the global market sustainability. Now, if another institution in University of California or somewhere, if they see with the shared vision, oh, fantastic. This is what our PO statement also. Why can't you come and give lectures? Why can't I share even my knowledge structure with you? Why can't your students come here? Why can't industries based upon that will come as a strategically aligned partner will find your people? That doesn't mean that rural people won't get jobs. They will get more jobs. Ability to design, implement the software, hardware system to meet social, political, ethical, health, and economical rural needs of India. Now the software, they are taking that. That doesn't mean the students will be empowered only here. They will also say, Uzbekistan might say, Ghana might say, and Thailand might say, oh, fantastic. This is in par with us. Why can't you send our students here to work with? Why can't we share teachers? And this is how this will grow. But both institutions are going in a totally different direction. Let us take a key learning area. Differentiate fibers from multi-threading in operating system. Now, this is a very important thing which I used to say. I do not know how many of you write this NECT program. I used to go for correcting the NECT papers in computer science, and now I have stopped. In Pune, some institute we go. And I used to tell our students there, if somebody aspiring teachers, NET program, National Eligibility Test, if you thoroughly study Unix operating system, you will get through, because it is 50% is Unix operating system, which talks about computer science. In a lighter vein, I'm telling this is used to be asked in a question like differentiate fibers from multi-thread. Now, how the CO statement is made by A. Ability in performing virtuosity. Performing virtuosity is an LO. Now, once you put it, you can put a tick mark of the PO in an area like modern tool usage. Performing virtuosity belongs to that. In differentiating fibers from multi-threading through what? CCL is coming. Contemporary core logic is coming. Microsoft Windows from multi-threading of Linux OS. So Microsoft, and this one comes in global scenario, the students will be learning in this key learning area, deciding on critical situation. So now critical thinking ability is put in. Performing virtuosity in the lower level talks about the modern tool usage, which comes, so authentic task will take care. So critical thinking ability and through performing virtuosity, modern tool usage is coming. Now the CO statement, according to this, people, ability in articulating socioculture. Now this is NLO. Articulating socioculture in M level, which says in a particular cognitive structure, if you describe this, it will go to the student. It assures you through best practices, the students will be able to attain this competency. Differentiating fibers of proprietary operating system and open source operating system for appropriate design for rural. So for rural houses, which one I will prefer? Open source or proprietary? Because how we are going to grow in another 10 years in Indian scenario for agricultural applications in rural scenario, I'm going to apply my computer science. So this is what I'm defining through my CO statement. And
Sir, please, sir,
yes,
please, can you show previous slide once again? Previous slide. Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now here, what do you want? This is a PO standard. It uses design systems that I have not changed anything. It is in italics. It comes under design and development solutions. This one comes under investigation of complex problem. Anything else you want to do?
Yes, sir. Sir, I got small doubt, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
But vision statement you have mentioned only for like rural development, some ICT concept. If it is a number of key areas, if I want to mention in vision statement.
Yes. Yes. No, that is what in vision statement I have generalized. Now, one example I have taken in the PO. PO could be 3, 4, 5 even.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
that is
Okay. Yeah, got it, sir. Got it. Thank you, sir. I got it.
One example. And then
Yeah,
the
yeah,
appropriate PO will come. The appropriate PO will come.
Number of POs will come there. Number of POs will come. Correct?
Yes, yes. It could be even 14, 15. Or some of the PO standard may not come. But your PO statement will take. That is what the NBA says you can have PSO. You can define it as a PSO. In fact, you can put everything as PSO also. Doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Program dependent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Now, articulated socioculture in the middle level includes communication ability and engineer and society. So when you put it under CDIO framework, it assures you through best practices that the students will be able to attain the articulated sociocultural learning outcome, and is going to attain this GA, engineer and society, communication in the middle level, and you can put a tick mark of communication and engineer and society under this CO. Now it is proof. Otherwise, how we are simply putting a tick mark, I do not know how the students will be able to. Now this assures that the students will be able to attain. Okay, some of you may be telling, I'm already doing that. I'm starting with a real world problem. I'm using an industry problem. But while the statement could be accurate to a great extent, but it is not based upon an overall framework, such as a CDIO, which is a scientific framework. It is based upon principles and isolation. So it is, you have to, in an institution, you should get into a policy to take care of this thing. That is what I want to mention. So I will summarize. You have to determine your current learner characteristics, correlate with your institutional characteristics. You have to revise your accordingly, because at a many trial and error, you could do so with respect to your instructional character, learner characteristics and institutional characteristics. Knowledge structure is a schemata. You can use the CDAO context in defining that. Authentic tasks through which only you can imbibe the abilities, and it can deliver through cognitive structure. Here comes the metacognition and so on. Continuously assess through best practices. It's not examination, it's not testing your student. In fact, I don't like the word testing. In fact, you should not test anyone in the world. Who are you to test? And it is only assessing. We have to assess ourselves, assess the students, assess us, etc. Continuously. You can map whether it is a time, use reverse engineering, go back and change it, align, reverse engineer, align, reverse engineer. It is through agile technique, incremental, iterative principles. Apprise you as a CDAO. A CDAO gives because it is started by MIT United States and not by ABET or ABET for professional engineers industry, where a CDAO is brought from MIT, which is an educational institution. So they have brought in separate teacher characteristics also. Now, when you own your knowledge structure, I have given in blue color, it is up to you. You earn 50% of money and your institute get the royalty 50%. Okay. In my regular course, this given only a background. I take 2-3 days on learner characteristics, institutional characteristics, all these characteristics, each one to take, I require 15 days time with a 200 work page workshop practice in which the teacher will be designing knowledge structure, authentic structure. He will try out with the students using cognitive structure and assessment. Okay, I just wanted to give you an overview. God willing, we will come on some other time and take it. Now it is open for discussion. I do not know how much you have taken, because I have seen from around 98 participants, it has become 42. Doesn't matter. Even if 30 teachers take it very seriously, then the teacher will become the training of trainers. That is an aim of the NEP 20. Our Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned it is going to be a Himalayan task to train our teachers. And the 30 multiplied by 30 multiplied by 30, maybe 1 or 2 years, if it goes well, our teachers will be well. Then our engineering, teaching, education will go like anything, like a rocket speed. It will go. It is in the rock bottom right now. And through this NEP 2020, and teachers are going to grow like anything. And I wish in another few years' time, engineering education will be the top in India, not only in India, throughout the world. It's going to become like that. Okay, thank you very much. And I thank once again the organizers for giving me an opportunity to share my experience with you. I just given something like that. I do not know, maybe I used a lot of terminologies because it is a theory, it is an educational philosophy, educational psychology. And that is why many of you might have not understood at all. And what is that I'm talking about? I'm sorry. I just wanted to give a brief overview of CDAO framework. Anything else we can discuss about it? Otherwise, I will go through.
Sir,
Yeah.
good evening,
Yes.
sir.
Yes,
Sir, I am having nearly 35 years experience,
Yes.
undergone number of FDC on OBE and NBA,
Yes.
and also gone to so many colleges, evaluators also.
Right.
But such a wonderful lecture I have not heard in my life.
Yes.
No, sir. Even though I was an ex-vice chancellor upon university, my name is Professor Venkatesh Raikar.
Yeah.
I was vice chancellor of Sanjay Godath University, Kolhapur, Maharashtra.
Okay, sir.
But hats off to you, sir. Hats off to you.
It'll be,
Because
it'll
today,
be my pleasure being that.
no.
Really-
You always, I believe we also lifelong learners, teachers also.
Yes, yes.
But really, sir, I don't have any words to explain your knowledge. Are beautiful, sir. Hats off to you. I learned a lot of things. But I'll be calling to my university, sir, as a resource person as per your convenient time.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Very nice of you. Thank you for the organizers. Okay, goodbye. Thank you.
No participants? Thank you very much for joining this session. It is a very interactive and nice session. Tomorrow we will meet at 10 a.m. for the next session. Thank you very much.